Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UFOs. Man, is today a special day? I don't know. Look at my shirt. Straight on this tie here. We've got a really fun guest today. I'm really just incredibly grateful. We're going to get into it right away. Because, of course, with a guy like this, you don't want to waste his time. So let me introduce tonight's guest. His name is Lue Elizondo. Welcome to the program, sir. How are you?
Well, I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I am sincerely really looking forward to this. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll quickly tell the story of how I first met you. And I'm an actor in Los Angeles, which means I'm a professional waiter most of the time. And you came into my restaurant. I was opening the restaurant and you were waiting outside. And I saw this guy. I'm like, who is this guy, man? I know him from somewhere. Of course, you do that thing. And then it hit me like a Mack truck. I was like, oh, my God. Lue Elizondo's outside waiting to come in here and eat. Holy shit. I ran around the entire restaurant. I told everybody you're like who you were, what you're like. I was like, yeah, unbelievable. All right, so he comes in. You were incredibly gracious. You were there with a production team. It was just a really, really fun experience. I've never ever geeked out as hard. I'm gonna just say it. I've never geeked out this hard. And I've seen Anthony Bourdain in our restaurant. I've seen, basketball stars, like just Michael Keaton. I've served Michael Keaton. I'm Batman. Did not move the needle for me whatsoever. You are the one who was like where I was freaking out and I couldn't help myself. And what was really charitable is that you offered to take a picture. I would have never asked, but you offered. And that was just a really cool gesture. So that story out of the way. I wanted to ask you right off the bat, I thought it was a really cool question that one of my favorite YouTube scientists says, and his name's Lex Fridman, and he asked this question. I was like, man, this is a great question to ask right off the bat. What would you write on your tombstone?
Wow. Well,
I know it's kind of dark. I don't know.
It's okay. No, actually,
you just got over COVID.
It's a great question. While I ruminate on that, first of all, let me thank you for having me on this program and your listeners for putting up with me. I tell people, I come from a significant blue collar family. When I say significant, I mean we weren't significant. The blue collar work was significant. We did a lot of jobs that a lot of society probably wouldn't want to necessarily do, but. I come from a family. My father was in the Bay of Pigs invasion, and we all came here. Pretty much the whole family are all are expatriates. We're in exile from Cuba, so I know what it is to work hard, and I also know that you're in the restaurant industry. I spent a good portion of my early life when I was in college in the restaurant industry, and I know it's hard. I know it's tough, and I know you got to do what you got to do to make ends meet. Yeah. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciate, you doing what you're doing as well. It was actually, I think I got more out of the deal than you did being able to take that picture with you. Cause now I can brag to everybody and say, look who this guy is, right? He's got his own show now. And one of these days you'll be,
I genuinely appreciate that. And you speaking of your dad in the Bay of Pigs just reminded me also that we have a lot of stuff in common. You're from Miami. I'm from Miami. My name's Luis. Your name's Luis. We're both Cuban. So there was off
for the record, you're far better looking than I am, but yes, we are both.
I tell you this, if there's ever a film made about you, I'd like to be considered for that role. I'd have to drop a couple pounds, but yeah, I'd give it a shot. So can you so going back to the question.
Back to the tombstone question.
Yeah.
not to be humorous, but the first thing off the top of my head is probably a tombstone that says, "I told you I was sick." But yeah, I'm obviously just getting over COVID now. I think in reality, it would be something to the effect of there was a poem that was written a long time ago, and it was a poem about the prince and the king, and the king loses his son, and the whole country mourns, and the birds aren't singing, and the people are crying, and the flowers aren't blooming, and yet in that same poem, a farmer's son dies, and no one seems to care. No one seems to pay attention to that. The father just lost his universe just like the king did, and yet it's inconsequential. And I think for me, that would be something nice to have on my tombstone to remind people of our humanity, to remind people that everyone matters, to remind people that every single soul is sacred. Every person on this journey is there for a reason, and sometimes we don't know what those reasons are, until later on in life. But we all have a purpose, and we all have a reason to be here, and everybody's just as important as everybody else. I think I would have that, and then as the ultimate joke, I wouldn't be buried in it, because I don't. I like my privacy, and the last thing I want is a bunch of people coming by and putting empty beer cans on my grave. So maybe what I do is leave that for everybody. Then I don't know, feed me the dogs or something. Do something useful with my body, I guess.
Well, I mean, we could always just, I like what Neil deGrasse Tyson says is what, and he kind of changed my mind on cremation. He was like, if you're buried, you're kind of giving yourself back to the earth. You're giving yourself back to the worms, and the worms enrich the soil. The soil gives to the trees and the grass, and you're essentially living. It's at a much slower and different pace, but you're there. And I was like, you know what? That I kind of dig that. That's
I think I might want to be stuffed. I think to be stuffed and maybe
that's that's morbid.
No, man, it's like brought up during parties and it's like in the corner or something, leaning up and.
No, I mean, how do you go from wanting privacy and no grave to wanting to be stuffed? That's an extreme turn there, my friend.
Yeah, well, I mean, just dust me off once in a while, just keep the cobwebs out of my ears, I guess. But
all right,
yeah.
Well, what's your favorite childhood memory of Miami? And just reminding, you said humanity, and I wanted to make the first part of this interview especially just about your humanity, because I think a lot of people get lost in your story and who you are and what you did for a living, and they forget that there's a human behind this. There's someone who has put a lot on the table and lost a lot. And in the last couple of that's okay, take your time. In the last couple of special interviews, and I've been listening to a lot of your interviews just because I didn't want to repeat any of the stuff you've been saying over and over and over and ask the same questions. But I just wanted to thank you publicly for your service, and I wanted to thank your wife and your kids especially, because I'm the son of a police officer, and I can understand having someone that you care for not come home for 2 days, and Lue's having a problem with his camera, and we'll wait for him to come back. But and I think he gets the gist of what I'm saying is that there is a human behind this story, and there's pain, and there's everyday regular stuff that you go through, bills to pay, kids to take to school and to pick up and to go to recitals and plays and, football games or sporting events, whatever it may be. So just so you guys know out there, I'm going to concentrate on that for the first part. And yeah, also, while we got some time, I could also say to you guys, welcome. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. And here we lose back. I'm going to wait for him to set up and be ready. And yeah, here we go. He's back.
I apologize.
don't
So we're
no
talking about humanity.
listen, first world problems, like it's
Right.
fine. Like things are like that are going to happen, but I was emphasizing your humanity. Just you're a father, you have 2 children, you have a wife, you have bills, you have I don't know what your kids do. And I was actually going to ask you, like what is your proudest moment as a father, for example?
Wow. Well, let me first answer the first question you had about
Yeah.
my good memories of Miami.
Yeah.
Um, I think when I was really young, the sense of family, being able to walk into my abuelo and abuela's room and hear the stories of old Cuba. My grandfather would make me a mango shake. A lot of the things that we grew up with, right? Going down to Calle Ocho and having,
Mhm.
some churros and, just stuff like that, right? Maybe a
Yeah.
cafecito, at Las Palmas or something like that. And those are really good memories of mine. And then as I got older later, when I was at University of Miami, I was a little known fact. A lot of people don't know this. I was I was a bouncer at a lot of the local
Yeah.
nightclubs because it was the only job I could get that kind of accommodated my schedule at the time, which was pretty intensive during the day in class. And I have a lot of good memories of that as well. A lot of college buddies and experiencing the Miami nightlife without having to spend money. Actually, make a little money
Yeah.
in the process. Those are my fond memories. There used to be a place in Miami as a kid, and I think it was called Snake World, right off of US 1, and it had this giant cobra head right there.
I think I remember the
Yeah.
tail end of that. It's like that would be
Yeah.
like some of my earliest memories from my
Yeah, man,
Snake World.
it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
As far as my proudest moments of a father, as a father, it's every day.
Yeah.
My kids never cease to amaze me. My daughters are absolutely and unequivocally the greatest accomplishment of my life. I will never be able to do anything as great as that, and have the honor of being their father and their friend.
Yeah.
I was always very honest with them, even as children. I told them, look, learn from me, and if you see me doing something right and that you like it, then do it. And if you see me doing something you don't like or you think is wrong, then don't do it. Um,
Do you ever
my
invite them to challenge you on sometimes on the things that you do?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
Where do
absolutely. No, and in fact, it's funny. My daughters are. I've told them since they were really, really small. I don't just tell me yes. Don't tell me what I want to hear. Tell me what I need to hear. Right. And sometimes that can be a tough conversation. I will tell you, growing up in a I guess typical Latino family, right? We
Yeah.
tend to be loud and boisterous sometimes. And I remember
Sometimes.
yeah, all the time. Yeah,
Sometimes.
we have two volumes,
Oh
right?
boy,
Loud and
yeah.
loudest.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. And it
so
gets
my
confused for anger a lot. Most of the times
no,
it's
they
a little,
do.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
more
they think.
passion than anger.
Yeah, they ask, well, "Why are you so angry?" I'm like, I'm not angry. I'm
Yeah,
actually pretty
yeah,
happy.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
my daughter was my oldest daughter when she was a baby. She would like a good father, you eat your vegetables and get healthy. And remember, my daughter was 3 years old, and my father had come to visit, and I mean, really old school Cuban guy, right?
yeah.
Spend years in Castro's jails, a little bit hard and a little bit salty. And I I heard my daughter saying, "Dad," it was like broccoli. She must have been 3. I don't want to eat this. And I said, "But, mommy, you have to. You have to eat this if you want to, have dessert. It's going to make you strong." And she looked at me and said, "Mm-mm." And I'm looking at my father, and he's smiling. And then I said, "But, honey, you need to eat this. It's good for your nutrition." And as she starts saying, "No, I don't want it," my dad is in the background. Oye, chica, you give him hell. You tell him where to go. No, you fight for your rights and your freedom. If you don't want to eat vegetables, you don't have to eat vegetables. You tell him that.
Yeah,
And I'm looking at my dad. I'm like, Dad, this isn't the revolution, man.
yeah,
this is
yeah.
this is just my kid eating vegetables.
Yeah,
Man,
yeah.
come
Well,
on.
I know a lot of those old timers, man. They will never let go. They will never
Yeah.
let go. And I think and a lot of people outside of Miami really don't understand that struggle at all. And it's weird because it only happened 90 miles off our shore. Still, it continues to this day. You know, and yeah, it's a sad thing because Cuba has never belonged to Cubans.
I know.
And
I know.
it's got a rough history, and you know, but at the same time, it's also it's in a time machine, right? Like you can go there and
how
it's
ironic.
1955.
You're absolutely right. It's like a time warp. And I often tell people the irony of life because just one generation before me, my father, here he is a young kid growing up in Cuba. And the only place he wasn't allowed to go was Guantanamo Bay because it was an American base. Long story short, he gets involved in the revolution, goes to be part of Bay of Pigs. He gets put in Castro's jail. One generation away later, the only place I am allowed to go, which is his son, is Guantanamo Bay. I'm not allowed on the Cuban side because we're in exile. And at one point, part of my job was to be on the other side of the jail cell, right? And what a juxtaposition! You know, talk about flip flopping roles in such a ironic way. Yeah, pretty crazy.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. I know, like my dad tells me stories of his father and the things that he was involved in. I'm you know, don't know if they're 100% true, but you know, you never know. The what was your the thing you were most into, say in high school? Did you play a sport or were
You know, high school for me was really a dark period of my life. I had a pretty rough. My parents, when I was real young, were quite successful financially, and the relationship went sour, and it just went from bad to worse, and we wound up losing everything. And I'm not going to give you a sob story because you know everybody's got challenges in their life, but you know, my times in high school where I found my refuge was in an unlikely spot. At the time that I was growing up, the only kids that went into ROTC were usually troubled kids. That's what it was known for. And so you had this program at the high school I went to, and ironically enough, it was the only thing for me that I actually felt I belonged to. It was a sense of family. I mean, I wrestled in high school and did some other stuff, but I wasn't very good at team sports. I didn't have the coordination to be a football or baseball or basketball player. I wasn't really coordinated. You know, really just you know, I don't want to say the term loser because you know I at the time I thought of myself as that and identified as that. But you know, being older and hopefully a little wiser, I was just a really confused kid. You know, and living through some pretty difficult times. So ROTC provided me a sense of belonging, a sense of family. We had all walks of life there, and there was no socioeconomic or racial discrimination in that program. There was one color and one color only, and that was green. And it was very much a all for one and one for all mentality.
did you find I'm sorry to cut you off, but did you find there was more structure in ROTC than other parts of your life?
There was investment by the instructors. They actually took an interest in developing you as a human being, making you a better citizen. Most of the kids in ROTC weren't going to go into the military. They were there. In fact, a lot of them were there because they had to be. But it wasn't a punishment. It actually gave us a sense of purpose. We were learning things that for whatever reason nobody else really cared to learn about. But I found it interesting, and I found the teamwork. Yeah, some of these people in ROTC were some pretty big rough dudes for real, and yet they would take the time to train you, to help you, these kids that were in older classes, and you could see that they were becoming leaders themselves in
Yeah.
high school. And so I for me, it was the greatest experience, and the only really good experience, honestly, I had in high school was ROTC. I did not have very many good experiences. I was
Well,
very awkward, and
yeah.
just a lot
Well, I
of
would say
dumb kid mistakes.
I think a lot of people have awkward high school experiences. I think that's very relatable to a lot of people. Some incredibly traumatic, some have great. I loved high school. I thought high school was the best. So it was. But I can relate. I can totally understand. Would you say that was the moment then you decided, you know what, I'm going to serve. I'm going into the military because I just love this format of conducting myself.
That's part of it. As a young kid, I was raised pretty abnormally. Those who probably remember me as a kid, my father was still heavily involved in the anti-Castro regime efforts. So, being a former member of Brigade 2506,
Mhm.
there were these other groups like Alpha 66, and this attempt to hopefully train the next generation of Cuban exiles to go in and frankly take it back. So
I'm sorry. Whoa, that is heavy. That is heavy. What you just said, that is heavy shit, man. So you were in a family that was training you to invade Cuba and take it back.
I mean, that was the understanding that at some
Yeah.
point, we'd at an
Or at
early
least,
age.
maybe not training you, but at least putting in that philosophy into you
Yeah.
as at a young age.
Oh no, and there was definitely some familiarization. I mean, at 10 years old, I could assemble and disassemble a Kalashnikov and
Wow.
M16
Wow.
and all sorts of
So
weird things.
this,
It seemed like Boy Scouts at the time, and looking back, you're like, wow, that's some
yeah.
pretty strange Boy Scouts. But you
Well,
know,
hey, I don't think that's strange, honestly. I think if you personally ask me, and I don't want to get political, even though one day I would love to talk politics with you, just because I'm curious.
sure,
Um, I don't see anything wrong. I think kids should learn how to use a weapon, build a fire, construct things at the earliest age possible because the respect is immediately built. Like I think if you teach a kid how to build a campfire, I promise you that kid will never light a garbage dumpster on fire or go into his class and be like, hey, look what look what I can do. He'll never do that because he's been taught the respect and how to build a fire. And I think it's
yep,
the same thing with a firearm. I think it's important for citizens to be armed. I'm sure that's been drilled into you as a Cuban as well. Like, Castro took the guns, Castro took all the
yeah,
guns, and nobody could fight him back. And it's true. And in true dictatorial dictator, I don't even know how to say it, but when a dictator's there, the first thing they usually do is come for your guns. Then they go for the
yeah.
press. And
Well, for me, it taught me a sense of responsibility and respect for
yeah,
firearms. In fact, for me, guns were never a toy. They were a tool, and at
right.
the end of the day, they were a weapon. And for me, the weapon was only as deadly as a person holding it.
Yeah,
But it taught me, in my case, it taught me a tremendous amount of respect for firearms and for making sure that you don't do anything too silly.
yeah,
But yeah, it was a very strange childhood.
yeah.
I
No. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people didn't know that. That's heavy, man. That's some heavy stuff to deal with just as a child, and then to
I
look
still
back
have
at
it.
it as an adult. Because like I think of some like traumatic things that happened in my life, and then I hear something like that, and I'm like, Jesus, man, like
I'm going
stop.
to share something with you. I still
No.
have this here. I don't know if you can see this, but Castro used to call our guys
Yes.
the worms. And
Yes.
so this
That
is
is. Oh my God, that's so great. That's so great, man. Damn. Okay. So Man, time flies, dude. I could really go on about Miami and your kids, and like I wanted to ask you. Okay, so just very quickly, if you can, when was the moment when you were like, you know what, I'm gonna serve. This is for me.
I think I always knew I was going to serve in some capacity.
Yeah,
Um,
it sounds like
but
you were almost bred for it.
it wasn't though until I was in ROTC that I really I glommed on to the rank and structure and the formality, if you will, of the armed services. There is a tremendous amount of history there. A lot of people have sacrificed to wear that uniform, and to me, it was a tremendous honor and privilege. And it was for me, very somber. I knew I had really big shoes to fill, just like your father, right? You said,
Yeah.
and the work that he did. I knew it was a commitment. I knew I wanted to serve my country. I just didn't know exactly how I was going to do it. And if it wasn't for ROTC, um, I don't know. Maybe I never would have found my way. But it was there at a time when I needed it, and it instilled upon me a sense of commitment, a sense of responsibility, a sense that the team is more valuable than the individual, and it was it was exactly the right antidote that I needed at that time in my life.
Gosh, I don't know what I want to ask you next. I guess I'll go with this one. Can you ever give me a time in your life where you were scared?
Every day. I'm a
Wow.
father. I mean,
Okay.
I'm terrified.
Yeah.
I live every day in fear for my loved ones and my friends, family.
If I could go Lue Elizondo pre-kids, is there an interesting story that you could share with me, or would it be just something you don't even want to talk about?
As far as being afraid, being fearful,
Yeah, yeah, just being just in a situation where you realized, oh man, this could be it. And I mean, I hate to ask you these weird questions, but again, I'm just trying to get to know you. I'm trying
yeah,
to
yeah,
really
no,
dig
no, fair questions.
into the psyche. I
You
don't know.
know,
I mean, I think the closest thing I've ever had, because I've never served, right? I've had my grandfather served. He was an airborne, my stepfather's father. I called him my grandfather because he was a huge influence on me, and he was an airborne ranger. He would tell me the story of D-Day, and jumping out of the plane and landing in the dark and finding his other friends in the dark with a whistle. Like, it just insane stuff. And so I have a deep respect for the military, and I think I am an agnostic, but I always find comfort in that phrase. There's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole.
yeah.
Um, I just want to, I guess, your feelings on that, and I think those moments when we think, oh man, this is it. I think those are interesting moments. That's just sort of, because I'm just interested to see where your mind maybe went.
Well, unfortunately, most of those moments occurred uh, after I had children.
Yeah.
They were from the '90s when I was doing some work in Latin America, but most of it was probably during times of theater engagement over in the Middle East or in Afghanistan. There were several times uh, that I thought, "This is it. I'm not getting out of here. This is, I had a great life and it was fun while it lasted, but I'm prepared to for this to be it." I wasn't. It wasn't fear. Uh, that's
Was there
probably not the right for me. The right emotion. It was. There was concern, seeing if there was a way that I could navigate out of a certain situation. But fear didn't happen until afterwards. After you get back and you have a moment to process everything that you just went through, and saw the things that you saw. That's when the fear would creep in. The fear that I almost lost my life and didn't even realize it, or
Yeah.
really even think about it or care about it at the time. because I was so engaged in the mission at hand.
Yeah.
But fear is something that we have innately as human beings, and fear isn't necessarily a bad thing. The key is to understand fear and to control it. Don't let it control you. But fear is a very healthy emotion. Fear is what allows us to navigate some potentially very harmful situations. So people say, "Well, I'm fearless." Well, you're stupid. Quite frankly, you ain't never been afraid.
Right.
You're ignorant. You don't know. You don't know what lies behind the next corner. That's irresponsible, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
especially so, that gets multiplied 10 times when you now have a family, because now the fear is no longer for yourself. It's for those you love. The fear that I cannot necessarily control every little thing in their life, and they're vulnerable. That for me is probably the greatest fear of uncertainty and the unknown as it pertains to my children.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Well, let me ask you, because again, I've been listening just a lot of your podcasts, and the one thing that really struck me, that my heart sank in the pit of my stomach because it just smacked me in the face. Holy cow, man! Like, this dude has been through the ringer, and it was that you had said that you had just talked about how tired you were. You were just exhausted, financially, I'm sure emotionally, physically. Are you close to just being like, you know what? Screw this. I'm out. I'm done. I mean, is part of you just really want to just get out of this and never talk
well,
about it again?
yeah, sure, but that's the difference between doing something you want to do and doing something you have to do. No, I'd much rather fade off into the sunset and go, frankly, work at Walmart. I I prefer my anonymity and my privacy. I'm not a Hollywood entertainer.
Mhm.
I never have been that guy. So for me, I have invested a lot emotionally and financially, personally into this endeavor. But but I don't want people to feel sorry for me. That's okay. I go into this with eyes wide open. I'm doing this because I believe in it. I believe it is the right thing to do, and therefore I don't have a choice in the matter. It's not what I want. It's what I have to do. It's a promise I made to the American people decades ago, and it's a promise that I intend to fulfill and to keep.
Can I ask you a possibly deeply personal question here?
You can ask me anything you want.
Has this topic is this the I- this topic is this the cause of your financial woes? I mean, have you really personally invested into really getting this story validity and truth and more legs, and just adding to the snowball that you've helped create? Is this topic drained you like that?
Yeah, I mean, up until very recently, I had my wife. We were living in a trailer. I
Yeah.
left an incredible paying job with the government, with an incredible 401k and everything else, and I walked away. And I made a little bit with TTSA as an employee, but I I lost a lot more than I received. But then again, I wasn't asking for. I'm not asking to be repaid. I'm not. That was never. I never got into this endeavor to make money or to be popular or anything
Yeah,
else.
no, I'm
You
not
know.
implying that at all. I just
Yeah,
wanted
no, I
to
know.
know if this was the reason why, sort of just this passion, I know Cuban passions, once you got something, man, you're not going to let it go. And in a lot of ways we're kind of like our old grandfathers in that sense, where it's just like, no, man, you fight for what you believe in, even if it's the
Absolutely.
broccoli. Um
Right.
Damn. Okay. So I I want to transition as smoothly as I can into sort of why your name is out there. And man, I would really just love to dive more into the personal side of things, just because I think your vulnerability serves you well. I
Mm.
think it adds a lot to what you're saying and what you do. And if I were you, I would seriously consider doing college tours and answering college kids' questions, and let the universities pay you for your time to do stuff like this. Genuinely, like,
It's funny you say
I
that.
don't see any shame in that whatsoever. I don't think you should be hesitant to do things like that at all. I think your story and your backstory and your bravery and you are paving the way no matter come hell or high water. And you've lost a lot. There's no shame in doing that. That's legitimate work. And it also, the amount of young minds that you would inspire in turn would be, I think that would be your greatest impact.
Well,
I think
I will share with you
your legacy.
People who know me well, they know that if I ever had one dream job, it would be to teach high school or college students. I would love it. Teach biology, teach history, teach. I enjoy investing in the next generation. A wise man once said that the greatest nation is but one generation away from utter ruin. And
Yeah.
In essence, it doesn't matter how much natural resources a country has, how much gold, petroleum, or anything else. The bottom line is if you don't invest in the next generation, you're going to lose it anyways. So,
well, you hear it here, major universities. Lue Elizondo is looking to be a professor. Let's make this happen.
I'm happy being just a high school teacher.
Well, I would
or a teacher's aide.
Give me Professor Elizondo, please. Even if you were just a teacher's aide, I'd still call you Professor. What would your class name be? Let's say you did make a professor. Let's say you were teaching a college course. What would be the course?
Critical thinking.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. That is a good segue into my next thing. All right, here we go. So let's switch gears. Let's get into your job, or your former job. The reason why people are here, right? I'm gonna start with this. You were a counterintelligence officer. Is it fair to say that you understand security clearance? What is acceptable to put out in the public versus what is not? Let me give you a scenario, if I can, for a moment. Let's say in this scenario that the United States government has retrieved a crash disk. I'm not going to say it's alien or not, but it's something that we've never seen before. And a gentleman works on this craft and its technology and claims to even back engineer some of this tech, claims to maybe even steal a piece of this tech. If, say, someone, and you know what, I'll even throw out the saucer. Let's just say it was 1973 and someone took a piece of metal off the F-117 Nighthawk and hit it somewhere and then came out publicly and said that they did it. Would the reaction from the government be to not arrest this person?
No, I think they would be very much inclined to retrieve the material and then probably prosecute accordingly.
And let's say there was no material. Let's just say that this person came out and said, I worked on a top secret program that back engineered alien craft, and these are the details. I'm not going to get into specifics.
Well, if I was in the government, the question is, if it's true, then and he's violating his or her non-disclosure agreement, that's a problem. But herein lies the problem. If it is that much of a volatile topic that by prosecuting, you're now admitting that you are indeed in possession of something, it's a bit of a catch-22, isn't it? Right. So you want to keep something secret. You go after the guy who's talking about the secret, only that in that action, you're actually revealing the very secret that you're trying to keep secret. There's some discussion there, but I think the government doesn't play. I've spent my time as an investigator and again, a special agent. And the one thing I have learned very early on is that Uncle Sam has very little patience for violating your oath.
Because I
There's a
mean,
reason
because
why Edward Snowden lives in Russia and not here.
right, right. Well, I wanted to talk about Edward Snowden with you because I think we have differing opinions, and I think you would probably be able to change my mind only because I'm a citizen and I think you know more than I do, and I'm always going to defer.
No,
Always going to
I,
defer. Well, listen, I'm always going to defer to a an information analyst than me. That's not my profession. That's not what I do. So I'm going to rely on the people that know what they're talking about.
okay.
So that's, that's that. But with that said, I mean, I guess I kind of have to ask, well, before I ask that, man, yeah, I don't want to just straight up ask that. Okay.
Go ahead and ask. Hey, no. Hey, listen, please ask it.
I
Ask
almost
it
want to
straight up.
build up to it, but with that said, why don't you just let it fly? Like if let's just and I wanted to preface this question with, out of how many years did you work at ATIP?
Quite a few.
Roughly. I mean, more than a decade. Okay.
About a decade, yeah.
Okay, so in a decade worth of information that you've poured over and you've looked at, just a rough percentage wise, how much of it is explainable versus not?
Well, that which is in the ATIP portfolio is all unexplainable. Otherwise, once we find an explanation, it gets out of the ATIP portfolio. So if it's in the ATIP portfolio, it still remains unexplained.
Wow.
I think I know where you're going with this, and
yeah.
let me see if I can cut to the chase on this, and correct me if I'm wrong.
No.
If a government is responsible for some sort of malfeasance, are people entitled to be whistleblowers for the greater good of humanity, even if it embarrasses the institution in which that individual serves? And my response to that is, it all depends on how you do it. Okay. What Edward Snowden did was wrong. He took information that was highly classified and he provided it to the Russians. He didn't provide it necessarily to the American people in a way using Whistleblower Protection Act, which is there specifically for that, or using your IG, Inspector General channels, or Office of Professional Responsibility, or these mechanisms that have been built into the federal system precisely for that reason, for addressing malfeasance. Okay, there are mechanisms set up. When you take information and you now run to the neighbor's house with that information, and now the neighbors are aware of what's going on before even you've had a chance to address it within the family, I disagree with that. I'm not saying that if there's some malfeasance that it's not addressed. We have a moral obligation to address it. That's exactly what I'm doing right now. It's not really with malfeasance, but it's with stovepipes and bureaucracy. I've chosen this route because I'm not a traitor. I'm not looking to disparage or hurt my country. I'm looking to help it. And sometimes you have to be vocal and you have to be outspoken to make changes. I'm not opposed to that. I think that's healthy. That's part of a democracy. What I oppose is the violation of an oath that someone takes to serve their country. And that oath is, by the way, a lifelong commitment. When I take that oath to defend my country from all enemies, foreign and domestic, that's not just an oath that I'm saying to the government. It's an oath I'm saying to myself. It's a promise. It's an oath to the American people that I have promised to give my life, if necessary, defending the goals and the ideals of this nation. And I'm not going to violate that just because people want to know information. There's a way to still get the information out and get the change you're looking for without running to a foreign adversary and giving them all your secrets. That's my problem with Snowden. Snowden wasn't a whistleblower. He was a spy. And had he gone through the normal channels, that would be we would not be having this conversation. You'd probably be hailed a hero.
Yeah.
But the problem is he chose not to.
I mean, I would say, and this is no defense of Snowden, I'm just putting myself in his shoes. If you found a program or something that was going on nefariously within the government that was spying on U.S. citizens and they didn't know about it, and that all that data is collected and stored somewhere in Denver, and that they're still doing it. They're still doing it. That he would be just terrified to go through those channels. It's not an excuse. I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying it would. I could understand the pure fear that maybe someone would go through, because it's like, well, okay, well, if I give this to my boss, is my boss gonna push it up the ladder and defend me? And it's almost like when I think of police officers, and my stepdad, he was convincing me always, hey, maybe you should be a cop. Maybe you should be a cop. And the day that he said that I shouldn't be, or sort of steered me away from it, was, you know what? If there was a day I'd be a cop, I would want to be in DEA. I'd want to be on the speedboat. I want to be busted down doors. I want to make a difference. And he says, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't be a cop. I'm like, why? He's like, because those police officers are exposed to some extreme temptations, and they're always the police officers that are looked at and constantly questioned, and constantly, oh, you bought a new boat? Oh, how'd you pay for that? Because when they walk into a crime scene, the first thing they sometimes see is a 4-bedroom house stacked to the brim, that's ceiling with cash in every room. And who's going to miss you going into a stack, picking it out and throwing it into your pocket, especially if if your teammates are doing it and now they're putting that pressure for you to do it. And if you say something, it very rarely gets escalated. It usually ends up being almost like a pilot coming out and telling their UFO story. They get ostracized. They get the shifts that suck or that are incredibly dangerous. So it's almost like this institution of protection has become almost like a gang. Almost like it's got a gang mentality where it's like, you don't rat on your own people, and if you do, we're going to make it pure hell for you. So in a way, again, I'm not trying to defend him, and I didn't want to get in this coded, but that's just sort of my viewpoint on it. And I'd love one day to deep dive on this, because I think there's an interesting conversation that we can have about it.
And by the way, there's other channels outside the executive branch. There's nothing stopping you to go see your he could have gone to see his congressperson, for example, his representative, and said, hey, look, I got a serious problem here that affects you as well.
And see, it's information like that where I would go, oh, you know what? That's sensible. Like, I completely understand that. And that's why I think you would be able to convince me otherwise, just because of you understand the security apparatus infinitely better than I do. And and the reason why I was asking you about your security clearances and things like that, it's just like, I want people to steer away from conjecture and stories and steer more toward the science and the facts. And if some guy comes out and gives these wild claims of secret tech that is back engineered, why isn't the government arresting his ass? And I also said to myself well, if they arrest him, that would sort of confirm that he's telling the truth. And it goes back to my question. Well, why don't you let it fly? If you see what happened to Bob Lazar, let's just say for a second he's telling the truth. Why don't you let it fly? It's the oath. It's the oath, and it's not the proper chain of command.
Right. It's the oath I've taken ultimately to you. And if I violate that oath just to satisfy someone's burning itch, then what's the purpose of an oath? I mean, this is an oath that I want to go to war for and possibly die for. It's a sacred oath, and it's like an oath to a spouse.
Yeah.
You don't want to cheapen that message, Oh, well, I'll only cheat this one time, right?
Right.
Then cheat all the time at that point, because
sorry to cut you off. Is there any situation or circumstance where you would look at that oath and go, you know what? This oath doesn't mean anything anymore? What would it take? Like, would it have to be a complete just dissolvement of government? Would it have to be a mini insurrection? Like, I love how people call this insurrection. Like, coming from Cuban families, I'm just like, man, this is not fascism. This is not a dictatorship.
Right.
Like, you want to talk about real fascism? Let's have a conversation.
Right.
Like, and I'm not a Trump supporter whatsoever. I think he's a disgusting human being. But if you really want to start throwing around the word fascist and dictator and this and that, You and I need to sit down and talk this out and hash it out, because that's not what this is. This is just a bunch of idiots online getting together and just that mob mentality. We can't follow the mob. We have to follow the rule of law. So I completely understand. You don't have to say another word about it, because there's so many things I haven't even touched.
You asked me a question. What would it take for me?
Yes, it's true.
To let it all fly? It would take a formal acknowledgement by the U.S. government relieving me of my obligation of my non-disclosure agreement. And then probably even a bit more of a nudge by someone in authority saying, Lou, it's okay. We want you to have the conversation.
Yeah. Do you think that'll ever happen?
I don't know. I mean, so far, I think we've done a pretty good job of threading the needle. Folks like Chris Mellon and I, we're very careful what we say. The conversation is occurring, things are happening, decisions are being made. It may not be exactly the way people want it to play out, or the narrative that they had in their mind of how it should play out. But the bottom line is we've come farther in 3 years than we have in 3 decades on this topic.
Agreed.
And I think it's because
in the last 6 or 7 decades, I'd give
and
you
I
even
think
more
it's
credit.
because we've taken a deliberate approach not to villainize the U.S. government. Because they're not. The U.S. government is, if you want to know what the U.S. government is, I'd say look in the mirror. It's all of us. We are, the government is full of people that love their children and just like we do. And, they want to do the right thing. There's a couple bad elements in there, but it's few and far between for the most part. The real enemy is the bureaucracy that doesn't allow this type of information to percolate to the top to where it needs to go.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I can't argue that. So gosh, there's only, I think, like 2 things left I could talk about. There was one question I had, which was burning, but I don't think I'm good. Well, it's been asked a million times, at least in the last couple times. Well, I feel like I have a pretty decent way to preface it. Are you sure you want this question? Okay. All right. I'm going to hit you with a list of names. Justin Doeffler, Captain James Ray Boshears, Lieutenant Commander Brian Weston, Derek Tarr, Commander David Fravor, Sean Cahill, and my personal favorite, Michael Villa, the Navy cryptologic technician, and his description on a warship in 1992 stationed in the Persian Gulf. What is one word to describe all of these men? What would it be?
Brothers.
Second word.
Heroes.
Okay. So then the question to you would be, all of these men gave personal, crazy, wild stories. And I found the most fascinating part of season 2 of Unidentified. And by the way, seasons 1 and 2, man, I could deep dive on with you all day. That's what I would, if I was going to start a college course, season 1 and 2 would be the first things I would show. And then probably James Fox's latest film. Those would be
next podcast you and I do. We'll get into that. No sweat.
I love it. So I'm going to ask a question. It was the most interesting part, and this producer asked you. You've told this story because she's asked you. You've told us about this story, about this personal UFO story. I want to hear this, and the reason why I want to hear this so bad is because I think, again, it adds a lot of the humanity to this topic. I have a personal story, and I think at the end of it, it's a personal story is almost like your fantasy football team. Nobody gives a shit about it, but here's the thing. I know you're not going to answer this question. I'm going to give you the pass. Okay. I know you're not going to answer this question because it's been asked, but what I will ask you before you answer, you're not answering, when, and if you do ever decide to reveal this story, I want to be the first person you tell.
I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
You got it.
I want to be the first person to hear this story. I think it's incredibly important. And I understand that you telling this story, you have a fear it's going to muddy the waters. I disagree, because I think all of these names I just mentioned, just like you said, they're brothers, they're heroes. They've given their stories, and that's how I wanted to paint you in the corner. I was like, I wanted to put the pressure that way. So I'm just
Touche.
laying
Touche.
all the cards on the table, you know.
Very good.
And
Very good.
I think that was my angle. But because I've
Touche.
heard a lot of these interviews, and I just know you're fucking exhausted, man. And I get it. Like, I totally understand. So my final question, and this is the last thing we're going to talk about. God, I had so many, much more. Okay. The last thing I wanted to talk about is, what is the one thing an average American citizen can do to further this topic and get more information and help you make your job easier?
Get off your ass, get off of the sofa, and arm yourself with information. Don't let people think for you. You think for yourself. Ask the questions. Get into the organizations that have data that they're willing to share. Look at the data yourself. Don't ask people what they think. Ask what the data is, and then you formulate your own opinion. It doesn't matter at the end of the day what I think or anybody else, because as people know, this topic is fraught with opinions. I think we need to make sure we don't fall into the trap of being lazy, like we have with the media these days, where it's no longer the news. Now it's the news in 5-minute sound bites. And I also want to know how I should think about it, right? It becomes an echo chamber. Think for yourself. There is plenty of data out there. There's a lot of real legit data. Arm yourself with knowledge and then pursue.
So how do you pursue? What do you do with that data? What would be your number one piece of advice?
Well, the journey begins right here, right now. You're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You're having this conversation, and maybe there'll be somebody out there in your audience.
Let's say you don't have a YouTube channel. Let's say you don't have a podcast. I'm talking about the average Joe, the everyday person who's listening to this. What can they do?
Start with social media. Just find out, get on Google, get on a search engine, and just start typing UFO reports, validity. Type in whatever headline you think would be interesting. And be mindful that there's a lot of proverbial landmines out there.
Well,
there's a lot of hucksters and a lot of fraudsters out there.
Well, the way I'm trying to steer you toward is, I thought the answer would have been call Congress.
Oh, well, that's different. That's a call to action. There's a personal journey here that has to happen first.
No. I'm saying for the citizen who's read the New York Times, who understands what's going on, who's listening and watching now, who's shared the stories, who's done all of those things, who's armed with the information. What is the first piece of advice you give them?
So once they get steeped into the topic and they want to be a vehicle for change, one of the first things you can do is write your representative, your congressional representative. Then you can also write to whatever favorite media outlet that you happen to watch or like or listen to, and let them know through some sort of either a letter, or you could do it with even a simple email and say, hey, I really like the content of this. This is very interesting, very intriguing. I'd like to see more stories like this. That's helpful.
The reason why I ask is because I've spoken with Ryan Sprague. I've spoken with Alejandro Rojas, and I've got an idea. It's called the Big Phone Home, and it would be May 26th, 2021. And it is an organized effort between anyone who's got a podcast, anyone who's got us, important to this UAP disclosure effort. And I would love to get your help with Chris Mellon, because here's my idea. Is I would love Christopher Mellon and maybe even you to get together and write a script that we can pass around, that I can do on a live stream, and I can call Congress and show people how simple it is to do. bring you on the show, maybe have you call a representative with me. That would be a lot, just to get the word of that this is okay to call Congress and do it. And something that I heard, I thought the purpose of this, the big phone home, call your congressman, get all of these channels and people to jump on board on Twitter, everyone. I don't care what your view is. You believe in the lizard people? Fine. We got a spot for you. Let's go. You believe in Bob Lazar? Great. Awesome. Let's go. And so the idea is to get you guys to write a script. Give us that script and then let me take care of the rest. Sure. And I know one of the requests, and I found this interesting, and I know this is going to be a big ask for people, is we want another 180 days because I've got a countdown and
143 days, right?
Yeah, it's 142 if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I based it off when the president signed the bill. And so I made, just a simple little countdown, and, I'll share that with you guys here. And so it's 141 days, and that's the countdown there. And so the idea is between now and then to get everyone on the same page, talking about this on the same day and getting a phone call blitz in the Congress. And let's see what we can do. And if one of the things that, you and Christopher Mellon come up with is, hey, we want another 180 days, and then maybe some bullet points of things we can ask for after that. So that way it's a concise one message, one voice. And I think, this is the best shot we got. You said, if we let them give us something in 180 days, it's over. It's over. It's going to be really hard to get anything after that. And I want to help you. I want to make your life easier. And I think the only way to do it is to get everyone involved. And if we could get 1,000 phone calls in the Congress, do you think that would do anything?
Yeah, it'll get them talking for sure. Congress responds to their constituency, for sure. Nothing strikes fear in the heart of a representative than getting calls from angry constituents. I think so. I'll share with you a little bit of something here, Luis. I think your audience would be happy to know that Chris Mellon is working just as feverishly as I am. And we are really working behind the scenes for a long-term solution. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail right now, but I think a persistent mystery like this deserves a persistent capability in the U.S. government to finally seek and provide answers that the American people want answered. I also think that we need to have a committee outside of the government, because there's only, the government isn't responsible for everything. The government should be looking at this from a national security perspective of what is it and how does it work. But all the other questions, that's not government's job. And frankly, I don't want them involved. That's just like I don't want government involved in religion. It's none of their damn business. That's not what they're here for. I think we need to have a grand conversation at the academic, scientific, theologic, philosophical levels, where the conversation now begins to permeate through all different facets of our society. Because ultimately, some of these answers are going to have to be answered by you and me, not government.
Right.
And I think, part of what you're doing here with your podcast is certainly a step in the right direction. Everybody always wants to heap accolades on my shoulders, and they say, well, how can you always just deflect it and push it back on us? Because that's honestly where the credit is deserved. That's where it should go. I can only do what I'm doing.
Well, it's really not. It's you give us too much credit. This side is, I think.
I don't think so.
I think it's. We've got UFO Twitter, we've got this, but how many of those people are actively calling Congress? We need a call to arms. We need to really motivate.
I think you'd be surprised. I think we could do more and a lot better. But it is. There are some key elements in that UFO Twitter space. That is really having a high, we used to call them in the government, low density, high impact. You have UFO Twitter, which tends to be a low density enclave. It's not millions of people. It's thousands, and yet they are making an asymmetric difference on the topic. It's an exponential effect that they're having, and they're having it because I mean now you have senior members of the U.S. government that have fake Twitter accounts just so they can take a temperature of the conversation and know how far they're willing to lean forward in the foxhole. That's huge. I could not have done that. That's not something. No matter how much I try, I could never achieve that because I'm just one person.
Yeah.
So
I hope to try and help you galvanize this movement and really put some focus onto one thing, one date that we can all come together on and participate in. And so is it a stupid idea?
Not at all.
Okay.
No, in fact, I think we should what we should do is organize something like this once a year.
Agreed.
I'll tell you something else would be great. You have all these places like Coachella and Moonrise, all these really cool places.
Let me tell you, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm literally just had a conversation with a graphic designer that I've got working on this, and the first words out of my mouth were, I want it to look like a Coachella poster.
So can you imagine having a 3-day event where you have great DJs out there and it's all themed about this topic? And then what you have is Lockheed Martin, right? You have Raytheon, you have Boeing, you have Bigelow there with their huge displays and inflatable, really cool space
arms guys,
yeah, right. And at the same time that these kids are partying and listening to great music about you're taking resumes for these companies, right? For these kids to go work at. And you get them inspired through that venue about this topic. And you have a couple of guest speakers that'll come out literally on stage and introduce the next band, right? And you have a guy come in on a jetpack and land right there center stage
I think that's the final goal for the big phone home. I think we could do that for part 2. We've only got 141 days to get this first one up off the ground. I think the biggest focus is getting people to call Congress, call to arms. And it is April 26th is the day. I wanted to do April 24th because it is the anniversary of the Lonnie Zamora case, which is a wonderful case. But we can't do the 24th because that's a Saturday. And, I wanted to pick your brain. We're not going to do this tonight, but just little things of just like, what would be the best day to call? Would it be a Monday? Would it be a Tuesday? Would it be the Friday before the weekend? So they got some time to think about it. Really organize this effort and get as many people on board. So quick yes or no. You're in? I'm in. Wonderful. I'm gonna email your wife and as soon as I've got more information, as soon as I got more people on board, the only thing I request from you other than your participation on that day is if we could please, once I get this information together, let's get Chris Mellon involved because I really want your guys' input on how we do this as far as how it's presented. So that way we can get the most out of this 180-day deadline and maybe even push it back and get even more. Because I think that's the most important thing right now. I want to make your life easier. I'm so tired of you being tired. I want to make your life
Me too.
easier. And you're exhausted. So I'm going to let you go. Okay.
Well, no, Luis, I've got a question if you don't mind.
Yeah,
I've got a question for you.
Please.
We spent a good portion of this evening talking about me and my experiences. If you don't mind, and for the sake of your audience, I'd like to know, how did you get involved in this topic?
Man, I weirdly enough, I remember in 4th grade, they would give us every week, they would let us go to the library and pick out a book. And every single week I found myself hovering over the UFO books, the Bigfoot books, the Loch Ness Monster, all of these weird stories. I don't know why. I cannot explain it to you. And then when I was 13, I had an experience at a party that multiple people saw. But I can also sit here and tell you, as a 40-year-old adult, memories change. Things, the worst keeper of time is the human brain. So, and again, going back to my anecdote, like nobody gives a shit about your fantasy football team. Nobody gives a shit about your personal UFO story, because at the end of the day, it doesn't forward the progress of where we're trying to get to. If you want to know it, I'll tell it to you, sure, but I'm not going to go out of my way to tell you my story just because it doesn't matter. It's anecdotal. It's a story. But the thing that got me into this, the thing that got me to do this show was meeting you. It was meeting you. Like I met you.
You give me way too much credit, man.
Look, man, it was meeting you, but there was also other inspirations. Alejandro Rojas and Martin Willis's podcast. And there's a lot of
good people
in this industry that I really have been. I can tell you one thing about the UFO community. Every single person I've asked to be on this show has not hesitated 1 second, including yourself, which is a big thing to say for a person who has less than 500 followers. Like I'm proud of the 470 followers I've got. Like I worked my ass off to get to this point. It's only been a year and we've got so much more work to do. We're just scratching the surface of this. And it was you, man. It was you. It was meeting you. It was like, you know what? There are so many UFO shows out there because you guys asked me my opinion on the show and I gave it to you. I didn't give a shit. I'm going to give you my opinion on the show. And, so one of the first videos I did was breaking down every single episode of season 1 of Unidentified. Then season 2 came out and I did a breakdown of every single one of those. And look, I didn't even get into that because there are I think I give it the highest praise. I love it, but there are things about it that I really want to talk to you about that that I've said, and just after having this conversation, I got to correct myself on now. Like you've given me a lot more insight into how this security apparatus works. You've given me a lot more confidence in just to throw around this word psyops. You're not psyops. Like that is such a fucking ridiculous thing to say, but there are reasons why people think you are. There are good reasons why people think you are. It's not a crazy thought to have, especially when you've got like a Richard Doty who literally put someone into an insane asylum. He ruined a human life. Terrible. And it gives a bad name to people who are trying to do good work. But with all of that said, dude, I can go on forever. Please stop me. So thank you for coming on. I'm going to stick around. I'm going to answer some questions for people in the chat. I'm going to get people's opinions, but I'm going to let you go because I can see you're exhausted. And I want to thank you, man, for doing this and carrying this torch. And my mission from this day forth is to try and make your life easier.
Well, Luis, the feeling's very mutual, and thank you for having me on, and thank you to your wonderful audience. Whether it's 2 people or 2 million, thank you, because they shared the evening with us when I'm sure they could be doing other things. Thank you for what you're doing every day. I promise you, and sincerely, it's making a difference.
Well, I appreciate
more than you know.
I appreciate
think it's pretty profound what you guys have been able to pull off, and you have my support 110%. So I'm in, and let's not make this the first and only podcast. Let's try to keep up.
Man, I would have you on every damn week if I could, brother. I really would. I really would, man. And look, it doesn't have to be just about UFOs. We can talk about whatever the hell you want. I mean, that's why I wanted to get as much time from you as possible, because I want to know who you are, and I want the audience and anybody who sees this in the future to understand you're human. You're not a goddamn robot. You're not a government insider. You're trying to do the right thing, and you have sacrificed money. And to me, money is that's like once you start losing dollars, that's when I start going, okay, this ain't worth it. And you're not doing that. You're still going forward, man. Like it's either a death wish or just the most honorable thing in the world, like a knight of the round table type stuff. So thank you for coming, Lue Elizondo. Thank you for getting weird with me here on the Unidentified Celebrity Review. I'm forever in your debt. I will be in contact with you, sir.
Luis, have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much. Again, my honor and pleasure. Take care.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye. All right, you guys. Wow. Okay, so I was originally supposed to get an hour and a half with Luis, and he asked me, he's like, man, can you do it an hour? I'm like, yeah, of course I can. But I mean, there's so much more, so many things I didn't get to ask. The time flies, but I really, really wanted to emphasize how important it is that we all understand what it is to be a human, and to talk about a story on this level, and what it does to you personally and financially, and to really, really understand that. So yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun. Man, so many other questions, but the good news is that we got them on board for the Big Phone Home. So expect that. I expect the Big Phone Home to be a telethon type event, where I'm going to stream all day and have guests come on the show and make phone calls, and encourage you guys to make phone calls. I always have the link to Congress in the comment section, so check that out. If you don't know the directory or where to go, it's right there for you. For all the new people that are watching this channel, thank you so much for checking us out tonight. If you like the content, of course, hit that like button. If it's something you want to hear more of, hit the subscribe button. It goes a long way for a new channel like us. And the mission of this channel originally was to review TV shows and magazine articles and anything that have to do with the UFOs, credible UFO information. And it's turned into an interview show. Like, I had never expected to have, I mean, it was a goal of mine to eventually have like a Lue Elizondo on the show, but to hit that goal within a year is thanks to every one of you out there. Thanks to everyone that's watching this. If you have any questions, you can start asking them now. I did not do the chat tonight just because I really wanted to focus on every single syllable that was coming out of Lou's mouth. When you produce this show, it's tough to be looking at the chat, read all the chat, I had videos. I mean, man, there was so many things that I wanted to do with this guy that we just did not get to do. So yeah, thank you, Derek, for the comment. Knocked it out of the park. We sort of went over Bob Lazar and his story, and sort of the legitimacy of his situation, and just him being a security. Like, go back if you haven't seen the Bob Lazar part of this interview. I think it's very telling as to what the reaction from our government would be to someone spilling the beans like that. Thank you, Christopher, for the comment. So happy you're here. Rodrigo, you're always incredibly supportive, so thank you for being here. The Undead Gacho, this is the first time I've seen you in the chat, so welcome, my friend. We've got Julie. You are also new to the chat. Gacho, I who's that for? I don't know. I don't know who that's for. I'm sure I'm losing some translation here in the chat, but appreciate the love. So we got Saul Quinn. All the question. Well, don't know what that means, but thanks for being here. Good shit, Lou Dogs. I appreciate it, John Doe. Elias, you're right, dude. He is a busy man. I saw him yawning at the end of this interview, and I'm sure he wasn't bored with the interview. He was just exhausted. And just listen to the last 3 interviews he's done, including mine, and he admits it. Like, he's just exhausted. And I have a feeling that he's close to being done with this. Like, I have a feeling this last push just doesn't work, or if it's if it ends up getting buried, under more bureaucracy. I mean, we could lose a great advocate in this field, and so I think it's up to us to try and help Lue Elizondo and Chris Mellon and anyone that is really carrying the torch on true disclosure, on trying to get as much good information that we can get our hands on, and really decipher it and go all over it. Great. Thank you again, John Doe. Mako Teco, thank you for the support. Or Tico. Let's see here. Who else is Kim? Thank you, guys. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Carl. You guys are so unbelievably wonderful, leaving all these comments, man. I'm so grateful to all of you. It's insane. UFO Majestic, just love this here. Love that you guys are participating in the show. My love of my life, my girlfriend Michelle, thank you for joining us. I do appreciate it. We got Carl Anderson. This is just, I mean, overwhelming. So let's see if we've got any new comments down here. Okay, so appreciate it. That's so sweet, Julie. Thank you. So let me see here. Hi, Luis. Hey, Carl. How you doing? Why do they need another 180 days just to come out to say it's real? So the word on the street, Aaron, is that they're sort of fumbling the ball with this 180-day release. I've talked to Alejandro Rojas about this. I've talked to AJ Banias, who wrote the article about the 180-day, deadline. I don't think he wrote that article, but he wrote, the about the two reports that's floating around Congress and sort of how this 180-day time frame could be coming up. If the president signs it into law, then that happened, and then here we are. So the word on the street is that they're fumbling. They're doing as little as they possibly can to fill that report after 141 days with very little or no new information at all. It's a very real possibility that nothing comes to light. And that's the feeling that Chris Mellon has. That's the feeling that Lue Elizondo has, that they're dropping the ball on this. And to give them another 180 days would just give the bureaucracy more time and less excuses to provide us with more info. I mean, look, we've already waited all of our lives to get as much information as we can out of the government. What's another 180 days? It's, I think, 6 months. It'll be at the end of the year. Like trust me when I tell you that time will fly. And I think if we concentrate our efforts on asking for another 180 days, and if there's some sort of verbiage that asks for, certain types of disclosures or certain bullet points of things that we want in this report, if we can't get that extension, and see how many of those bullet points we can get revealed. And if we get another 180 days, then we expect all of those bullet points to be met and satisfied. So, but the only way that happens is if we call Congress. The only way that happens is, like Lou said, get off your ass and do something about it. Like, it's the only way, whether it be UFOs, whether it be the dirty water in your town, whether it be, homelessness epidemic where you live, whatever the issue is that you care about. Doesn't have to be UFOs. Honestly, the best thing you could do is call your local government and call your officials and give them hell once a day if you can. Like, that would be a way over the top goal, but even once a week, once a month, like, it doesn't have to be once a year, and that's what I'm advocating for. Just once a year, we call and we all do it together. We have fun. We have people come on, talk about their experiences, call Congress and just have fun with it. Make it a community event. Make it like we said, a festival of understanding, a festival of peace, a festival of love, a festival of demands. Like, it's okay to have demands from our government, and it's okay to ask for these things. And the idea is to get a script. The idea is to get words on paper. So if you're nervous doing things like this, all you have to do is just read it off the paper and let them know. And I think you'll be shocked at how many congressmen, if they're not available at the time, will call you back and actually have a conversation with you about the topic. I think you'd be shocked. You'd be shocked. I mean, if 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people call at the same time, I mean, I don't know if you'll get a phone call back, but you'll at least get them talking about it on the floor again and really putting pressure on the other 3-letter agencies to, hey, you better give us some good information because people are asking for it. But they're not going to do that until we ask for it. So I hope that answers your question, Aaron. James says, I think another big problem is it's across multiple agencies and some of the clearances. It's a multiple agency thing. It's a tetrahedron, as they say. It's just like an octopus with, 8 different heads. You have to get all of these moving parts to get on the same page and give you a concise report. It's just to do it in 180 days. if you know government, like it moves incredibly slow, you know that's just going to be a pain in the ass. So why not ask for the extension? Why not give them the more time? So hopefully we get more data. Okay, so yeah, bring on the cafecito. Am I right? Like, yeah, I need a little shot of coffee. You know what? Hope you guys excuse me here for a second. I'm just gonna refill on some water because I've been talking for an hour and a half. So let's see here. Something always happens when people get close to learning anything new. Got to keep it in the public forum. What do you mean by that? Something always happens when we get close to learning anything new. What do you mean by that? Do you mean something like somebody drops dead or what? I hope not, because that would be a pretty crazy statement. I don't think. And I didn't get to ask Lou this, but I wanted to ask him the Occam's razor question, and that is, do you think that this technology is out of the realm of human ingenuity? Do you think it's really that crazy that a group of brilliant minds, scientists, came together because of a government contract or whatever, and came up with an insane form of propulsion that they just don't even know how to use it yet? And maybe they've tested it and maybe they've played around with it, but to introduce this publicly would just be, I just don't think the public's ready for it. And when I say that is like, so, and I talked about this with somebody, I can't remember who, but this idea that, Michio Kaku says that we'll have machines that'll be able to create matter in 30, 40 years. But the problem with technology like that is you can't just throw that into people's living rooms and expect them to be responsible with it. Especially if you can, print a gun or print something that could harm somebody. Like there's got to be, you got to test it. There's got to be approval. There's got to go through government regulations. You got to make sure it doesn't kill anybody when it's turned on from the radiation. Like, there's so many things that product would have to go through before it is ever put into public hands or use or used, to propel energy. And that's another thing I wanted to ask him was the energy question. A lot of folks out there say, well, the reason why the government doesn't want to release, information about these crafts is because they're afraid that the technology would change the world. It would, free energy and all of this stuff. And I would tell you, we kind of already have that technology. Just take a look at a nuclear submarine. Like they've been running nuclear submarines since the mid 1950s. And so for 70 years, they've perfected the nuclear reactor. And never once in naval history has a nuclear reactor failed on a submarine. Seems pretty safe to me. If you put a submarine, I think if you lined up, 10 submarines in Los Angeles and you hooked them up to a power connector somehow, I think it'd be able to run all of Los Angeles, no problem at all. And it would be clean and efficient energy. I feel like the energy's there, but it's got such a bad stigma that people don't even want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So it, I don't think that's an excuse for the government not releasing this information. It's like they've already got the tech. The tech already exists. It's nuclear. Like that is absolutely 100% tech that would change and revolutionize everything if we really put our money and time into it. And if for all of the naysayers out there that just hate nuclear technology, like, you hate old nuclear technology. It's not as dangerous as people pitch. Again, in 70 years, 72 years of naval experiences with nuclear reactors, they've never had a meltdown inside a nuclear sub ever. So, that's got to be said for something. So Carl says, Lazar knows full well why this is locked up for as long as they can, some of it for very good reason. Possibly, I'm kind of in the camp of, I don't know if Bob Lazar, what he was looking at was human made and he confused it with alien tech, or he's just making it up. I think personally, he's making most of it up. I don't think he's telling the truth, but I will be making a video on that very soon in the next week or two, going over all of the reasons, especially like this reason that we heard here tonight from Lue Elizondo. Like if these security oaths are as serious as Lue Elizondo's is, Bob Lazar should be in a prison. He should be in Guantanamo Bay, as a matter of fact. Like, there's no, I don't think there's any way the government would have even let him get that far if what he was saying was true. But yeah, but that's it. Any other questions from you guys out there before we cut this stream? Sometimes I invite people to call into the stream. If that's something you guys want me to do tonight, let me know. I'll put the link to the stream in the live chat, and you guys could call into the show and we could talk about whatever you want. So yeah, let me know if you guys want to do that. I'll take another sip of water while some of you decide. And funny enough, we've had a caller every time I've asked for this. The only thing I say is turn down your YouTube or whatever you're watching this channel on, and please don't be naked. I don't want to get flagged for this video. I don't want to ruin this whole wonderful interview because you wanted to play a look at me, I'm naked joke. No takers. All right, you guys. Well, thank all of you so very much for coming aboard, getting weird with me here on another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UFOs. Before I leave, I want to say thank you to the sponsor, BlueMarlinChronicles.com, purveyors of the world's finest fishing tackle since 1995. I also want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all of the music you hear on this show and all of my other shows. So their SoundCloud link is in the description below. Feel free to check them out. They are an incredibly fun band. And that is it for me today, you guys. I appreciate it. All the newcomers, all the new people, bless your hearts. Subscribe, share, ring that bell so that way you don't miss any of these for sure upcoming interviews. We're going to have a lot of fun guests coming up, so you don't want to miss any of this stuff. And I hope this interview was different and fresh for you guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, sweet dreams to you, Julie. Sweet dreams to everyone out there. Thank you for coming aboard, getting weird again. And I will see you guys next time. Unidentified. Unidentified.